Less than 24 hours after the 2024 NHL Draft, we're going to break down all the picks the Canucks made later in the draft, and we're going to do this later on the episode. But before I start, I just want to give a big shout out to the almost 3,100 of you guys that are subscribed. Earlier on when we did our video, well, yesterday, we were under 3,000. You guys smashed the subscribe button. It's awesome to see the community growing. Just want to give you a shout out from me and Griffen, just saying thank you so much for subscribing. Let's try to reach 4,000 before middle of the summer, or let's say 5,000 before the next season starts. But if you guys haven't subscribed yet, make sure to go down and hit it, because we'll be here all off season giving you updates from all around the Canucks. But with that, let's get straight into the first draft pick, which was Riley Patterson. Riley Patterson is a right wing coming out of the Barrie Colts in the OHL. He had 29 goals, 33 assists for 62 points. Obviously 6 foot, from Canada. I know a lot of people like hearing this. He is from Canada. You don't got to worry anymore. 192 pounds. He's a right-handed shot. Just 17 and a half years old. And Griffen, what's your thoughts on this Canucks pick, taking Riley Patterson?
I like it. I think it was one that not a lot of people had on their radar. I think he's someone who will add a bit more speed to this team. We see Vancouver starting to try and develop where they've had a bit more holes in this past season, where speed was a factor against the Oilers. The power play was a factor throughout the entire season. Physicality was a factor for a lot of it when they didn't have Dakota Joshua or Nikita Zadorov. So they are trying to get bigger, beefier draft picks that they can beef up in Abbotsford or back in the minors. And they want to have a good future built, set in stone for when these free agent contracts do eventually expire, and make sure they have a team for the future. So I think having speed be a part of that identity, and then physicality with some of the later draft picks that we'll get into, I think those are two things that are going to go hand in hand for Vancouver going into these next few years and with these draft picks. So I think having those complementary lines where you're not having just a speed line or just a physical line. I think having those complementary lines where you have one speed guy, one physical guy, we're seeing that in their defensive core as well, with Juleson maybe finding a faster linemate to go with his physicality. And we see that with Hronek and Hughes complementing each other very well. So I think he's someone who will find a very complementary line mate where he's going to do very well.
Yeah, and the biggest thing is, like, when you're kind of looking just the elevator pitch on this guy on the bottom of the screen, dynamic speed, a quick release, flashes of NHL caliber hockey senses make him one of the draft's most exciting mid-round bets. You see with the just attribute rates from rankings from 1 to 9, 5.5 in skating, 5.5 in shooting, 5s across puck handling and physicality. He does need to work on his passing a tiny bit. Same with his hockey senses. But these are raw prospects coming in. Obviously, the Canucks had no top-end draft picks. They didn't have a first. They didn't have a second. So we're going to see a lot more guys being drafted due to just developing and hoping they hit their potential. The last thing I will bring up on Patterson was the draft guide on him. Patterson uses blazing crossover and smooth puck handling to attack the inside and catch the defense off guards. Sometimes he dangles through opponents before ripping a quick release wrister. And that's the big thing. Like you said, Griffen, these guys are coming in. They're going to draft these guys for more speed, just more development to get these guys into Abbotsford, into the Canucks system. And how long do you think it's going to take before maybe we see a guy like Riley Patterson make the team?
I think with his development, I think with a lot of things that he has to work on, I think 1 or 2 seasons in Abbotsford would be really useful for him. Maybe he gets a little bit of experience at the end of that second year with Vancouver in the playoffs or later in the season, or just as an injury filler. So I think about 2 to 3 seasons is when I think we'll see Patterson hop into a position on the Vancouver Canucks. So I think he'll just develop, like we said, he'll work in Abbotsford. He'll work with this Manuel Halter down there, and develop his speed, develop his passing, get his NHL IQ up a bit more so that he is ready to make that jump when his number is called up to the show.
Yeah, and that's the biggest thing. We're going to see these guys develop. Obviously, none of these guys are dead cert to make the Canucks team or Abbotsford. They're all prospects. I know a lot of people in the comments were saying, hey, how is this guy steal? He wasn't a top-end pick. But you see guys like Pekka Rinne that were drafted in, I believe, the 8th or 9th round. These guys are drafted on potential, and a lot of these guys have high potential, including the next one we're going to cover, which is Anthony Romani. And I know, Griffen, you're super pumped for this pick itself. But when you look at Anthony Romani, he's a right wing, 6 foot, 179 pounds, 58 goals, 53 assists for 111 points in the OHL this year. And Griffen, I'll let you take the runway on this. What's your thoughts on this pick?
I am over the moon about this pick, to be honest, Mark. When we did our draft video about a month and a half ago or so, Melvin Fernstrom was one of those 4 guys out of the 8 that we covered that I was really high on. And Romani was another one of those. I think the reason why he wasn't in last year's draft was because maybe he didn't have the production that scouts were wanting out of him with having only 50, with only having a few points. He went from 50 points up to 111. So he took that personally and went into this season with a chip on his shoulder. He led the OHL in scoring. He was second amongst all skaters. And I think he's someone who is going to be a stud on Vancouver. And I think he's going to be playing for the Canucks sooner rather than later. I think he's a guy who's going to be that top end talent that Vancouver has been waiting for to develop into a star, like Elias Pettersson, where he might have a chance to just work his way up the scoring sheet and just have massive seasons, potentially triple digit seasons right into his second season potentially. I think the sky is the limit for this kid. He has a very low floor. I mean, all the draft picks do have a relatively decent floor because they are just fresh draft picks. Like you said, they're coming in. There's no guarantees on what they're gonna make any rosters. But I think this is a guy where it is almost a sure bet that he is going to be in an Abbotsford jersey, and I think he's going to be in a Vancouver Canucks jersey sooner rather than later. He's going to make opportunities happen. He's got speed. He's definitely got the scoring, and I think he's going to be the jumpstart that this team needs. And I think he'll be a surprising deep line guy where he's going to be one of those third and fourth line guys that they're going to count out. They're not going to scout for him as much, and he's just going to exploit them completely and surprise them you're going to catch him by surprise.
And the big thing is when you kind of look at like the elevator pitch on this guy, an ice stretching transition passer with a knack for perfectly timed wristers and one touch passes, improved physicality and skating give him a chance to crack the show. You continue into the elite prospects, and I won't go through all this. You can read it if you wanted to. Pause the video. Most of Romani's offense comes off the rush. He's an ice stretching playmaker, hitting teammates with long bombs across the ice. So this guy coming into this Canucks team could add more scoring to this team. Could definitely add more passing, as this is one of his strong suits. The biggest thing I like about this guy, and I know Griffin's super high in Romani, my highest prospect was drafted a few years ago, which is Jonathan Lekkerimaki. I think two of these guys would be perfect on the line together. You have a goal scorer, you have a passer. We've seen this in Ovi and Backstrom. Obviously, that's going for the stars with these two guys, but two of them could complement each other, and I think they could be a good line in the show just sometime soon. Now, we will get into the third pick, which is Parker Alcos. Parker Alcos is a defenseman, 6'3". During the WHL season, he had 1 goal, 14 assists for 15 points in 67 games. And Griffin, what's your thoughts on the Canucks finally taking a draft pick who is from Canada? I'll keep saying it, from Canada, because I know you guys get mad in the comments, but this Canadian boy being drafted.
Yeah, Patrik Allvin went and got his Swedish boy, and then he went and got 3 Canadians right after that. And I think this Alcos is a big boy too. He's someone who is going to have a lot of size as a rookie coming in. I think playing with Abbotsford, he's going to add a lot of size and physicality to that team. And if they beef him up in Abbotsford, he's going to be even bigger once he makes the jump to the NHL. So I think that's going to be something that's very useful for Vancouver. Who knows? Maybe he's like a Zadorov type in the future where he's just a wrecking ball, or Dakota Joshua. Maybe he's not a winger like Dakota Joshua is, but maybe he's that goal scoring physicality player where he's going to ruffle feathers and light up the score sheet. But he could also be like Zadorov where he's just a wrecking ball who ruffles feathers and is a good chemistry guy.
Yeah, because the biggest thing with this is, and with the size you were talking about, he is 6'3", just at the age of 17. This guy, obviously, the elevator pitch once again. A tall, smooth defenseman with a shutdown defensive potential and a sneaky good puck mover. Now, you do go into mobility forms the basis of Alco's game. He's a fluent skater who achieves full flexion through his strides. You can just read through this. I'll pause it once again. But we see the Canucks finally draft a defenseman, a right-handed defenseman, which is one thing around this league that seems like every team in the NHL needs. So drafting these guys with just kind of that has high potential, maybe not the highest potential where he's not a first-round pick, not a second-round pick, but you draft these guys and hope to develop. You get a big defenseman. You can't teach size, so any big pick is a good pick in my mind. And maybe we'll see Alcos make this team in the future. Who knows? I'm sure he'll be spending another year in the WHL, but we'll get into the last guy, which is Sansonnens. So when you do look at this, obviously this was a 17-year-old. I will be honest, we could not find a lot on this guy. From Switzerland. He's August 19th was his birthday, 2006, so he is a a late bloomer. He's still only 17 years old. He's 6'4", 198 pounds. He was drafted in the 7th round, obviously 221st overall. You do look at this by Daniel Gee, shout out Daniel on Twitter, but he said he's a 6'4" Swiss left shot defenseman that was drafted 221st overall. Young for the draft, and Sanson played 4 games in the National League this season, the top tier league in the Swiss league system. So the Canucks once again go out and get another defenseman of size to add to the back end. And Griffen, I know there's not a lot to know on this guy, but what's your thoughts on the Canucks once again taking a big defenseman?
From what little we know about him, I am very much happy to see that pick. Again, he's another big boy where we're going to be losing Sidorov. So eventually, somewhere down the line, I know it's not going to be immediate, but there is going to be a player like Sidorov that we're not going to want to have to go after in free agency or make a trade for and then have to pay a boatload of money for. Why not have a guy where you have him within the system, you build him up, you develop him, and then he's able to just make that jump where he's already with you guys and you don't have to pay him too much when he's on an entry-level contract. So I think that's going to be something that Vancouver is going to really like in the long run, especially when you have some of these contracts in the defensive core in the later lines where they're not entirely long-term contracts, but they're contracts that are going to work for this Stanley Cup window that we currently have open, and they're ensuring that that window stays open for the future once those guys are gone.
Yeah, that's a big thing. And obviously the Canucks didn't have any of these top picks. I know a lot of people are saying that in the comments, but they're building a competitive team. They're still adding prospects to their cupboards. They're trying to look to win now and still build for the future. And just overall, what's your guys' thoughts on all these prospects? I know there's quite a few prospects and a lot of prospects you might not know about. Hopefully you know a bit more after this video. Let us know down in the comments. But speaking of the comments, we'll get everyone's favorite topic, which is comment of the day. And the comment today comes from DMWD96 and says, "Love all things Canucks. Keep up the good work, fellas." Shout out to you, WD, for the comments. We're loving reading through the comments. We're loving you guys enjoy this video. So if you want to go down and leave a comment, you could be featured on the next episode of Canucks Digest as comment today, just like your friend DW did today. And while you're down there, make sure to leave a like, subscribe. We're trying to reach 5,000 before the start of next season. I'm putting that goal down. It's going to be over 5,000. I know you guys can do it. But make sure to go down and leave the like, comment, share this with your friends. We'll be back tomorrow with another episode, or maybe later today. Who really knows? But I've been your host, Mark, with my co-host, Griffen. Take care.